but what I can't stand about this debate about Jordan Neely in New York is how so many people are basically negating Jordan Neely, Jordan Neely's individuality to just simply make him a plug and play representative of the downtrodden or of black people or whatever, and to make Daniel Penny into this plug and play white oppressor. And, you have people like AOC and others, talking about how, Jordan Neely was killed for being homeless. No, he wasn't. I mean, he wasn't killed for being homeless. If Daniel Penny was going around killing people for being homeless, he probably wouldn't do it in front of a bunch of iPhones and pick someone who looked like they could fight back, right? There are lots of targets to kill if your whole point is you just want to kill people, homeless people, for being homeless, for the crime of being homeless. There's zero evidence that was Daniel Penny's motivation. Maybe it'll turn out that it was, but I highly doubt it. But nobody knows, literally nobody knows that. And the facts that we know right now suggest otherwise, right? And we have no idea if Daniel Penny cared about race in this situation or anything like that, right? But it doesn't matter to the way we talk about these things, is particularly because a lot of people in the mainstream media, particularly people in the left ideological media, they come from universities that teach you this is how you talk about society. This is how you look at things. You study society like it's an allegory, and you pick characters that represent themes that you want to talk about. And not just that you want to talk about, they're the only themes that you kind of know how to talk about. And so, everything, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. When all you have is critical race theory interpretations about society, then everything in society looks ripe for that kind of analysis. But the thing is, Jordan Neely died. The Jordan Neelys who die every day in the New York City subways or in New York City writ large, from drug overdoses, from muggings, from accidents while being high, and they don't make the news because you can't drag in this so comfortable narrative about white supremacy and all this. And so one of the things I find disgusting about the way people talk about this case is they're the ones who are negating the agency and the humanity of this obviously tragic, screwed up guy, Jordan Neely. And then instead they're just using him as a prop. He's a commodity, as far as they're concerned. And I find it gross. And again, I'm not going to get into a both sides thing, but the right does this kind of thing a lot too. It is embedded in the way we talk about politics right now. What's his name? The kid who shot people in Wisconsin during the Black Lives Matter protests. The kid from the mall, from Covington High School, whatever, with the MAGA hat that everybody just went nuts based on a picture, because it was like they see the picture and all of a sudden it's just autofill from their mental chat GPTs about the kind of arguments that they want to have, the smug whiteness against people of color, all that garbage, right? Is we want to talk about things in these grand narratives that bolster one side or denigrate another side. And okay, so that's the thing I talked about in the G-file. What I want to add here is how this ties into Hayek's critique of social justice. Because Hayek's critique of social justice, it confuses a lot of people. He at one point he wrote, if there was anything, I'm paraphrasing badly, if there was anything that if he could only teach people one thing, it would be to understand that the concept of social justice is bogus. That is, it has all of the weight of phrases like a moral stone. That was his phrase. And I think this conversation kind of helps explain this point, insofar as the common law approach to justice it requires a specific human being with a specific complaint about a specific injustice done to him. Right? It's not just analogous, it's deeply tied into the arguments we get in American legal fights about standing. You can't go into a court of law and simply say, I think society is badly organized. Right? You can't go into a court of law and say, I think there is structural white supremacy in America. Judge, do something about it. That's the kind of argument you can make to a king, but we don't have kings, or at least we're not supposed to in this country. You need to have a specific, like so-and-so's horse ate all my corn, right? Or this company put, laxative in the baby formula, and now someone needs to paint my house. Like you need a specific complaint with a specific wrongdoer. And then judges are supposed to look narrowly at the facts. What did you do? What happened? Who's to blame? How can we solve this in the most beneficial way to all parties, or the most just way to all parties? Because sometimes beneficial isn't just, right, to all parties. And do it as narrowly as possible so that you don't create precedents that then have adverse consequences for the cases that come in next week, right? If you do some sweeping thing and say, henceforth and forever, all horses must have training to reject corn. Well, that's going to create all sorts of other problems, right? You keep it as narrow as possible. You try to put a dollar figure or a guilder figure or whatever the currency is at the time, and move on, right? People go to court because they have specific gripes, specific complaints, and judges are there. Ideally, obviously, this is an ideal that we pursue. It hasn't always worked perfectly, but they go into court with a specific gripe about some specific circumstances, and judges try to fix it. And over time, the precedents from those decisions build up into what we call common law. The problem with social justice is it thinks of people and society as a canvas, right? It thinks of people as a category, and it thinks of society as this sort of malleable, rearrangeable thing that there is an aesthetic idea in mind about what society should look like, and we call that social justice. And so for the purposes of social justice, we are allowed to redistribute resources as we see fit. We are free to, or empowered or warranted or whatever, to enrich certain categories of people at the expense of other categories of people. And this is what Hayek was getting at about why social justice isn't justice. It is simply a term that some people use for unrestricted power to arrange or engineer society as they want.